Hi everyone, Hungry Reader here. And if you're like me, you just found a great new thing about people to be incredibly disappointed about. I'm sure you saw it too. It was on the Onion AV Club and then a whole bunch of other places besides. Apparently there are some people in this world that you and I share and have always shared who are so dedicated to never ever admitting that they were wrong under any circumstances that they will keep digging and digging their hole until they finally hit the many worlds hypothesis and have to say, well, I guess I must have slipped through into a parallel universe where Berenstained Bears isn't spelled with an E, like it is on Earth 1. Now, I'm sure that I don't have to introduce you to the Berenstained Bears. I mean, we've all seen the spinning carousels with those softcover books on them, or maybe seen them in the check stand at Walmart or wherever. It's just very sweet, very simple stories about a family growing up having little first-time adventures, which is why they're called first-time books. But if you've never actually picked up and read one of these books, I don't blame you, there's quite a bit of literature to go through. You might not realize that the Bear family is not in fact called the Berenstain Bears. That's the names of the authors, Stan and Jan Berenstain. The Bears are just the Bears. And for that reason, I can kind of understand why people might not have picked up on the idiosyncratic spelling of their name. Especially if you're a new reader and still haven't gotten this whole cursive thing down. Or, if you learn to read in this century and thus will never learn cursive nor need to. Stan and Jan Berenstain were married professionals. They both wrote and they both drew, and they both worked together from the time that they were married in 1946 until Stan's death in 2005. How do I know this? Because it says so right here in the first book they ever wrote, the Berenstain's Baby Book from 1951. Take careful note of the letter A on the cover. Keep looking. See? Admittedly, the Berenstain's Baby Book is a bit more of a grown-up book than I usually focus on the Hungry Reader, but I think I can think of a few reasons to make an exception. A, the Berenstains are some of the best-known children's book writers. A, it's in the news right now, and A, this will help me segue my way into the rest of the Berenstains books. So let's crack it open. Here's the Berenstains' first book, which they say is also their favorite. Now, the devil baby on the cover is adorable, but I'm more drawn to the proof positive that this book came from 1951. At what other time would Froggy the Gremlin ever appear on a picture book page?
I'm gonna watch that baby turn into a devil, I will.
Kids, ask your grandparents who Froggy the Gremlin was. What the Berenstain's Baby Book is at heart a manual for new parents. Don't confuse this with the Berenstain Bears' New Baby, though. This book is significantly more sarcastic than any Berenstain Bears book. Which really makes me sad that there was never the Berenstain Bears Learn About Sarcasm. Sometimes Ma and Pa Bears and little cubs on the grow say things they don't mean, which you totally didn't know. Your obstetrician has calculated the date on which you are to become a parent. He has circumscribed a 4-week period as a general target area and at its chronological center pinpointed the natal day. By the time you are well into the succeeding 4-week period, it becomes clear that, like Truman in 48, you are going to make monkeys out of the experts. The most fascinating part of this book is seeing which parts of child rearing haven't changed in 50 years. Like the importance of keeping the baby amused in the bath, or the mind-numbing task of reading the same book 3 times a night for 40 nights straight. But it's all worth it to have a literate child, right, Mom? Mom? Most surprisingly to me, at least, this book is proof positive that the video generation didn't start with the 80s, it started with the 50s. Every Walt Disney movie has its counterpart on records. The excited voice of Cliff Edwards blares forth through the dark house.
Come on, Pinocchio, I shouted, and just then Pinocchio found he had sprouted donkey's ears too. Then a tail popped out. Come on, quick, I yelled, before you get any worse.
And that is why I'm not too concerned about all those kids who spend their lives in the back seat of a minivan with a TV screen mounted on the back of the front seat that is continuously playing Despicable Me 2. That would have been your parents and your parents' parents if the technology had been there. And then there are aspects of child rearing that I only know from books like this and maybe occasional references on Mystery Science Theater. Case in point, the word toity. Toity? The only place I've ever seen this word in print is in books by the Berenstains. And then there's all the games you can play with your child, like Peekaboo. Still a classic. Horsey, the game that all dads get nostalgic for the second the child gets too heavy to carry. Bomb Bomb Boots, the game where the child and parent crash their foreheads together. Wait, what? The parent crouches on the floor facing the child. In unison they cry, "Bomb Bomb Boots," and crash their foreheads together. Baby is delighted and screams with hysterical laughter. The parent accepts 2 aspirin proffered by his mate, who is scheduled to play the winner. Was this a thing? Stan and Jen, are you putting us on? The Berenstain Bears and Too Much Bomb Bomb Boots. When small bears crash heads together with paw. Ow! And then there's a whole chapter about the cowboy fad. A small fry yesteryear whittled himself a wooden 6-shooter and pretended he was a cowboy. Today's version is convinced from the top of his $7.95 10-gallon hat to the tips of his $12.95 tooled leather boots that he is a cowboy. $7.95, $12.95. Hang on a second. Yeah, in today's money, that's $73 and $119, respectively. For boots? Incidentally, don't expect his 6 guns to go bang, bang. Bang is as outmoded as 23 Skidoo. The current form is a throaty pow. Wow, and just 40 years later, in 1991, it cycled all the way back to bang.
You did it! I told you I'm knock you up!
We're not gonna make it, are we?
And now, somehow, just as if to drive the point home of how nonsensical this world is to us, there's a whole chapter about bringing your baby his morning chocolate cigarette? I'm not even kidding! There's a whole 2 pages about teaching the child how to smoke with chocolate sticks. God, I'd rather teach my kids how to sext. And of course, the final stage in your child's life is when they become not the baby anymore, so there's a whole chapter about teaching them the facts of life. To many parents, the stork story or the doctor brought you in his little black bag routine seem easy outs. Actually, I shouldn't laugh at that because, I was actually a home birth myself. I don't recall any details about it, but there was, in fact, a doctor present, not just like a crunchy granola doula. It was an actual doctor. Of course, and that's not to say that everyone else wasn't there, too. I mean, my then 12-year-old brother was in the room as well, so I hope they didn't try to tell him that the doctor brought me in a little black bag. Also, all through the book, we've been seeing Mommy dressed in relatively normal outfits. And then we see her maternity clothes. What the hell are you wearing, lady? Was it really necessary to put on a maternity hat? It may be more an artifact of the last century than hard and fast rules about child rearing, but this book is a real delight, and you can really see in the illustrations and the dialogue just how well they knew child rearing and how well it would translate to bears. One last thing before we go. In 2002, Stan and Jan wrote their autobiography, Down a Sunny Dirt Road. In it, Stan Berenstain cites an interesting thing that happened when he was in 4th grade. On the very first morning, when Miss McKinney called the roll, she took exception to my name. She said there was no such name as Berenstain. The name, as everyone knew, was Bernstein, and that was what my name would be, at least in her room. When I raised my hand and protested that Berenstain had always been my name, she silenced me with an icy stare and said she didn't approve of people who changed their names. So you hear that? Don't be like Miss McKinney, people. Don't try and tell people how their own names are spelled. Because if you take exception to someone's name, that's your problem. If you think, hey, this name that has an A should have an E on it, you know what? There's a word for people like that. S-holes!